Welcome to the Exaribus channel. I'm Colleen, the owner of Exaribus Logistics, and welcome to our first episode of MBA Mondays. So today we are going to talk about break-even points, something that everybody needs to be aware of. But before we go any further, you know what to do. Like and subscribe below, because remember, all money from this channel is going to go help homeless veterans get their CDL license. Break-even point. What exactly is this? And do you know how to calculate your break-even point? We're going to go over this in just a minute. Break-even point. This is when your revenue equals your expenses. And we want to figure out how many miles do you have to drive, or how much do you need to get per mile to make sure that you are making a profit. The first step is to figure out your total loaded and unloaded miles for the year. So if you haven't done this before and you're new, then you're just going to estimate what you're going to run. But for our example, we're going to look at how many loaded miles. So we're going to take 108, how many empty miles, 8,000, and your total is 116,000. So we're going to keep these numbers in mind as we go along. Next, there's going to be a few numbers that you're going to need to know. The first one is going to be your average miles per gallon. So you should know that. The next number is your average price per gallon. You can get that rate at gasprices.aaa.com. Now, next is going to be the gallons of tractor fuel purchased in the last year, as well as any reefer fuel. For this example, we're not going to leave out the reefer fuel, but we do need to keep in mind these other numbers because they're going to become very important as we continue. Next, we're going to look at your operating income. How much revenue did you bring in last year from your truck? Now, we can also add in things like interest earnings and other business income, but for this example, we're going to just leave those numbers as zero for right now. Next, we're going to talk about your fixed operational expenses. These are going to be the expenses that stay the same for your business throughout the year, regardless of how many miles you run. So these would be things like your annual truck payment and a trailer payment. Could also include things like your truck insurance, medical insurance premiums, workers' comp, all of these extra things, but they're going to be fixed. So regardless of how many miles you drive, these expenses will stay the same. This is important because next we're going to look at variable expenses. Now, your variable operational expenses, these are going to be those things that the amounts are going to change, like your fuel. That's going to change depending on the miles you drive and the cost. Tires, that amount is going to be a variable, as well as meals that you may be eating on the road. Now, there's other things like legal fees and accounting fees and other miscellaneous kind of stuff that would also fall under this. So it's very important that you take a look at all your expenses and understand what category they would go in. And then that allows you to calculate about how much you're going to spend over the whole year, so you can figure out your break-even point. So let's now walk into the final calculation. So our final calculation, we're going to look at our total gross income of $220,000. If you divide that by the 116,000 miles you drove, that's going to be $1.90 per mile. So that's going to be your average rate per mile that you got. Now, if we look at our total expenses, this is also going to be our break-even point. We're looking at this being divided by 116,000 miles again, and that brings us to the $1.36 per mile. So that's actually what you're going to need every load you take. You can't go any lower than that $1.36, or you're not even going to be able to pay your bills. Anything above that, that's where you're going to make your profit. So let's now calculate how many miles you're going to have to run to cover your expenses. So if you take your $158,000 expenses divided by $1.90, which is your average rate per mile, you're going to need 83,158 miles to cover your expenses. So, what's our final takeaway here? Well, we know that we're going to have to do loads for no less than $1.36 per mile, and that's just to cover our annual expenses. Now, if we get $1.90 a mile, then we know that we'll have to drive at least 83,158 miles to cover our expenses. Anything over that $1.36 or any miles over the 83,158, that's going to be your profit. If you found this information helpful and you'd like a little bit more detail, you can go ahead and contact us. We do have an Excel file that we can send you. All you need to do is email us at admin@exerebus.com and let us know what you need. Veterans Family Logistics. It's who we are.